Okay. Yeah. We're back. I wanted to just pick up on 1981. The new network MTV launches, and you had a role in that. So, can you talk about what it was like at that time at MTV? And
I almost had a different role
oh,
because American Live ended, my AD on that show went on to work for, and then very quickly became the executive producer of MTV. And he began the search for the first group of VJs. I said, Julian, give me a shot. And I auditioned to be one of the VJs. And quite frankly, my memory may be shady about this, but I think I got pretty close. At least Julian told me I did. And I might have completely made a left turn at that point in time. But I didn't. And what I did do was get a call from him shortly after they launched saying, we're going to do a live 4 or 5 hour New Year's Eve show, and it's going to be in a hotel in Midtown somewhere, and we're going to have all these gigantic acts and people partying for the all time zones. Every time it turns midnight, we're going to count down and make it big with the VJs scattered all over the place. It was an enormous, enormous show, way over their heads, and pretty far over mine too, because it was so big, and too many bands, and too many VJs, and too many locations, and too many cameras. But we got it on the air, and it was exhausting, and it was long, and I remember it being kind of thrilling. And we did that at least 2 years in a row, maybe 3, and I have fond memories of that. It certainly added to my tool bag for shooting music, and that's served me too. When I took, well, I guess we'll talk later about how and when I ended up at Saturday Night Live, but some of those skills carried over.
yeah. What are the challenges of shooting a live band? I mean, other than audio and technical, I mean, what are for you the biggest challenges?
My job is to put the audience in that concert hall and to let them sit there, watch it on television the same they would watch it live. Oh, there's a guitar solo now, I'm watching him play, and oh, the backup singers are singing, and now the lead's got the next verse, and it's gotten quiet, and the lights have changed, and I'm concentrating on him or her, and bang, the drummer just jumped in to start the chorus, and so capturing that action as it happens, or anticipating when it's going to happen, is a separate set of skills. Now, the way I approach music now is a little different from those days, and that has to do with Lorne Michaels, and once again, that may come up later, but my job was to show off and let them show off, and to do so in tandem in a way that didn't conflict. And my showing off was what cameras can do, and where you can put them, and what you can shoot, and interesting angles, and
Right.
and mostly staying with the structure of the song and the performance as it happens in the right way, in the right time.
All right, I gotta ask, because we brought up that you've got a great radio voice before, but if you had been a VJ, what would have been your show? Like, what would have been your focus, or what kind of music would you have showcased?
I think I would have been the Motown guy.
Oh.
I think so.
Maybe that's why you didn't get the job at MTV.
That might have something to do with it.
But I like that. Moving on.
Yes.
So we're back at Good Morning America. You were the senior director of the show. So you talked about how it was just sort of another happenstance. You bumped into someone on the
Right,
street, really,
right.
from the Douglas days.
Right.
So can you talk about sort of what a typical day was like for you, what your role was on that show?
There was
stepping into a show that had been pretty established again.
Right. As I mentioned before, one of my skills, probably my most valuable selling skill at the time, was to say, I can make this show make this transition seamless, and that people watching won't know that there's now someone else calling the shots. And so in that show, that was a pretty intense, high mountain to climb, to be able to reproduce a look that had so many remotes, and it was so different every day, and there was split screens, and there was a monitor in use, and Good Morning America at the time was hosted by David Hartman and Joan London, and they had a style and a chemistry that had to be captured in the right way. And there were so many locations on the set that had to be properly shot and gotten to, and there was a camera choreography that was involved. And I took pride in that challenge and catching up quickly. But you know, a year or so later, it came time to make some changes, make some adjustments, and revise and refresh. And I felt pretty good about being part of that too. And that was new graphics, new music, new animations, and new set layout, new furniture, and occasionally whole new parts of the set.
And a new host when Charles Gibson.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I have some of my fondest memories have to do with both those guys. Both David and Charlie, in different ways, were really fine people who cared about the work and cared about the audience and cared about the material, the editorial content, much more than they cared about how they looked or how they were received. Or they just were hard-working, really fine people. Both of whom retired early, and I'm not sure why. I've run into both of them since and shared great memories. Charlie Gibson and I were in Venice for a Reagan conference, and all of the press people stayed at the Lido, which is an island that's just south of the main city. And to get to where the conference was and where our set was, we had to take these little speedboats from the Lido to the center city. And at one point, we were on this, just the two of us, on the speedboat. And we were both complaining about how the prices had been jacked up to rip off the American press, and how we weren't very happy with the technicians that had been supplied to us by the Italians. We were complaining about life in general as we rode on the speedboat across the bay to Venice. And almost at the exact same time, we looked at each other and started to laugh, realizing that we were complaining about the opportunity to be on this speedboat and just riding into this beautiful, remarkable, magical city. We were being paid to do it. We were part of this historic event that involved the President of the United States, and all we had to do was get over there and do a 2-hour television show. And we both laughed out of our own sense of entitlement and how jaded we had become, and realized that neither of us should have been. And it was really a nice moment.
Yeah.
And that kind of slap in the face, I do often. I walk down the street and see so many people who hate what they do, and they live from weekend to weekend. They can't wait for vacation or can't wait to retire, that they find their work as drudgery, and I get to be a part of making people laugh and clap and work with brilliant people from all walks of life, and genius writers and designers and cast members. And I keep reminding myself that I don't deserve to be jaded about how much I've been blessed.
Getting up at 3 a.m. is no thing.
That's not good for you, and it does affect your health in lots of ways. It's not healthy for marriages. It's not good on several levels, but it's still a fine, challenging job that I don't regret any of those 21 years.
Mm. So why did you leave GMA for CBS?
Someone who was at GMA had gone to CBS. They were looking for someone. They had just started the CBS This Morning. It was about 3 months in, and they were struggling and floundering on several different levels. And as often happens, they start by firing the set designer, and then they fire the makeup people, and then they fire the director, and then they finally get around to maybe what's the core problem, but they needed somebody, and they offered me the opportunity to control more than just the morning operation, or at least to have input in more than all of the CBS look.
Yeah, your title is creative director.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it was a way to squeeze a little more money into my contract offer from the rest of, I don't really know. I was given some responsibility with the look of some other shows, and a lot of the one-time only specials that CBS News did, I directed, and got a chance to work a little bit with the Washington people as well.
Yeah, Face the Nation. Did you
Yes.
had a hand in redesigning the logo?
Correct. Redesigning the set.
The set, okay.
Maybe the logo was involved too.
Yeah.
But I also involved with the graphic design of, or the redo of the graphic design of CBS Evening News.
Now again, graphic design. What is your background with graphic?
I looked at what graphic artists would show me. I'd say I like that, and I like that one better than that one. I had learned a little bit more about what works in television, and the ratio and color and movement, and design, animation over the years. Mm-hmm. I just had a running functional understanding of the basics, so it was all filtered through me, and I got another statue for it. I feel a little sheepish about it, but some brilliant graphic designers came up with some brilliant new, fresh ways to tell news stories, and I said, that's a good idea. And
was there still a drive for you with just news, that genre in general, as opposed to the variety shows and the talk shows? What attracted you to the news at that time?
Not much.
It was more the job and the role and the opportunity.
That's right. And the directing responsibilities had more to do with a big, broad range of stuff. It wasn't so much, oh, there's breaking news, let's jump on the air and do a special report, because that's the excitement of letting the country know something's happened. There's a lot of pure journalists who do have that rush, and I admire that. I didn't. What I liked about it was we would do a fashion show, and then we would do a demo, and then we would do a music act, and then a talk segment with 14 people, and it was and we'd take the show on the road, and we did a week of shows. It was called Vacation Summer, and we did every day was in a different location across the country. We did a show first in Key West, and the next show was in Maine, and then we did a show in well, it was a hopscotch across the country. It was
Cuba, right? You went to Cuba?
We did, yes. We did shows in Cuba. We did a show across Europe. We did shows in Italy and France and Monte Carlo on the same week, and those were enormous logistics challenges and design challenges and aesthetic challenges, and those were thrilling.
Mm. Did you have to change anything about your own style that you were developing with the rhythm and the pacing for news with these shows?
No, I think that by that time I had captured a lot of different genres and could do a celebrity interview at the same time we were doing a head of state remote, and knowing that later in the show we have a rock and roll band tucked into the side of the set, and I think I moved pretty smoothly among those, and that is all of that experience has served me enormously here at Saturday Night Live.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And going back to your first love of sports, you also got to direct some Olympic game coverage.
Mostly that was the morning studio summary.
Okay.
I didn't direct any of the sporting events, but we did 3, maybe 4 Winter Olympics where we were the morning anchors, and we did summaries of what had happened. We did remotes from the locations of the venues. We did interviews with winners, and that was intense too, in a different kind of way. I love that. I got to sneak off and watch some events too.
I mean, yeah. I mean, just the thrill of meeting some of those people must have been exciting for you.
Definitely.
Are there any real memorable moments or memorable challenges from your days at CBS News directing?
We did a show at Mount Rushmore where the mount got fogged in. Could not see the mountain. David Hartman is standing here. All of those heads are right behind him, shrouded in clouds. I believe just before we went off the air, it lifted a little bit so that we could see it. It became funny enough, I guess, that it was worth watching, but it was pretty tragic at the moment.
Can't control the weather.
Correct. That I mentioned that trip to Italy. The first show was in Pisa at the Leaning Tower, and our travel schedule was really intense. We had to get from Pisa to Florence and set up in Florence for the second show. And as we ended the show, I went sprinting from the remote truck to the bus that was going to take us to the next location. And as I get on the bus, I look around and no one else was there. I went running out of the bus and said, we've got to move on. Where's everybody? They said, well, the people at the Leaning Tower have invited anybody who wants to walk up into the tower. It's blocked off. Nobody goes in there except officials. And they were allowing crew members to walk up the tower. And I was so eager to get to the next location, I refused to do it. I said, it's going to slow us down. Get through it, get in there and get out. In retrospect, I had a chance to walk. I had a chance to walk up into the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I turned it down. Maybe my only regret in television.
Huh.
Did get when we did the survey for Mount Rushmore, I did get to walk on Lincoln's head. Again, people don't get to do that, but the national the parks people took us up, and we walked up on the head to look down on the faces. That was pretty cool.
I would imagine. What about, heads of state and people that, were interviewed? Was there ever anyone you were just a gaga over that you couldn't believe you were getting
We
to?
did some great stuff at the White House with President Clinton. I got to shake George Bush I's hand. Got to we did make one big mistake. We did a show at Westminster Palace or Westminster. There's another castle outside of outside of London, was sort of the weekend residence of the Queen, and we did the show from there, and we couldn't get any of the royalty to be guests, so we hired lookalikes for Princess Diana and Charles and the Queen, and we were not welcomed back after that. It created quite a stir. Turns out the Queen was in the building at the time, and she was not pleased that we had lookalikes for the royal family. In retrospect, it was dumb. It was a dumb decision.
At least it was better than hand puppets. That would have been worse.
Oh, I wish you'd been on that staff. That would.
Well, you're still at CBS. You directed 6 of the Survivor finales. Talk about how that happened and why just the finales?
Survivor came out of nowhere. It's going to be on the CBS schedule, which was suffering badly at the time. CBS This Morning was not doing well either. But we got this word that they had decided to do this game show where 20 people, or maybe it was 12 people from different walks of life, just ordinary people, would be brought in and thrown together and have to come up with some survivor skills, and then every week one of them would be kicked off. And I remember thinking, who cares? Who will care about these people? Who will care who gets kicked off? How in your world can this be a television show? Well, because it was a CBS show, and because we were suffering too. We were the only show that agreed that the person kicked off could appear on the show the next day. Nobody else was interested. And I certainly wasn't either. But because we had to show clips and because we'd be interviewing this person, I had to watch the show. Well, about 3 weeks in, I got hooked. I thought, this is pretty cool. It's really the dynamics of human interaction, and it's a little society that grows and folds and cheats on each other, and they plot against groups, and I love the production values. I thought, this show is so fun to watch. It really is like a real life soap opera. It's got soap opera manipulations and interactions and characters that emerge, and I got to know those people, and I thought, I love this show. Well, they picked the winner, and almost overnight they said, well, wait a minute, this show is turned into a hit. Let's do a full-scale primetime reunion where we'll have them all on to talk about what it was like. And because we being the New York people knew the show best and had them all on, they flew a couple of us out to California to do the reunion show. And it was also a big hit. Yeah. And it was tough because it's complicated, and I was sort of designed from scratch. But it was a big hit, and I liked doing it. Well, the next season, which was about 6 months later, we decided to go even further and sort of recreated the look of the tribal council and put them in different arrangements, and put all the contestants in different arrangements with Jeff sitting like he did over on the side, and that was an even bigger hit. The third season, they decided to not announce the winner until we were on the air live. So in the final episode, Jeff walks out to count the votes, and then he says, we'll be back in 2 months or something to let you know who wins when we're live in California. So we did it that way, and that too was a big hit. Well, the next one, they decided to actually recreate and stage the closing moments in a way to fool the audience, so that Jeff walks out and he walks back in, but now we're in the studio, and the home audience, we tried very hard to make sure the studio audience didn't know, thinking they were still in the Philippines or wherever the show was. So we recreated every last detail of that set and that look and some of the contestants had changed a little bit in the 2 months, so they looked different, but we had to put them in the exact same outfits and the exact same positions. And so that Jeff walks back in and he does the counting and the winner's announced, and then I do this snap zoom to zoom back and show that whoa, wait a minute, we're not in the Philippines, we're in the studio in California, and there's a giant audience here in the foreground, and that was super cool.
Wow, yeah.
The next one we did in Central Park. It was after 9/11, I think. It was sort of a tribute to New York that we did it. In Central Park, and it was a similar structure. We didn't try to fool anybody, but all of those experiences were just big, massive live shows. Completely different from the way that they do the show in the field, which is clearly an edited show and done well. But the live finales were just big time show business. I love doing those. And the way they do them now is pretty similar to the way we did them on show 2 and 3.
So why did you leave CBS around 2002, I believe?
I burned out. I guess 21 years of morning television had finally taken its toll. I had a marriage fall apart. My contract was up, and I think we had moved the show to the GE building. It had become the early show, a completely different format. It was with Bryant Gumbel, and it was a different producing team, and there were different attitudes toward how we best could possibly step up and compete, and I wasn't happy. And they weren't happy, and we decided to be unhappy in different places.
So what was next for you?
I did several pilots. I did several syndicated talk shows. I was floundering a little bit.
You directed the pool coverage for the first anniversary of 9/11.
Right.
How did that come about?
People from CBS News asked me. It was, I wasn't a pool director. It's a separate set of skills too. And I struggled a little bit just with the responsibilities and who I was really working for. And it was a tough day for lots of reasons. And of course, we were on the air live with CBS This Morning when it happened a year before that.
I was going to ask, where you on 9/11? You were on air.
On air, and we had just moved to the GE building. I had put 2 cameras on the roof of the GE building just to have a little different look for bumpers and intro shots. And those were the only 2 cameras that could see the World Trade Center. And about 10 minutes to 9, my AD pointed to a monitor that was right in the deck, and I looked down, and it was one of the cameras had been swung over to what had happened. One of the video guys who controls that camera had heard something and swung it over, and I could see this hole in the building. And I must admit, my first reaction was, oh my God, some stupid single-engine plane, some private plane got disoriented and flew into the building, and that means we're going to have to extend for the West Coast. And that was a term we hated, because if something happened during the show that affected the news that we had aired at 7, meant that when it re-aired for the West Coast, we had to update it. That was the word we used. We're going to have to update. and updates were just a pain. And we were sitting on that shot when the second plane hit. And you don't actually see the plane go in the shot we had, but you see the explosion come out. We zoomed out quickly and saw what had happened. And at that moment, it was, of course, it changed the world, but it certainly was one of the first moments in a control room where I haven't been able to get out words and haven't been able to talk. And I certainly don't think that what I went through is anything close to what many people went through. But it was a wrenching couple of weeks, especially since we'd be on the air for 5 or 6 hours, and people I couldn't turn off the set, you know, and we interviewed kids who had lost dads, and it was wrenching.
And as many years as you had been in the business and had been covering news, it was not like anything.
Nothing like that. And it was in our hometown, and you could, silver sparkles in the air. You could smell the fuel, and sirens were nonstop, and many of us rushed to give blood, and there was no need for blood, actually. It changed all of us in lots of ways.
Yeah. And yet you took that responsibility a year later to oversee the coverage. Was it?
That was healing in some ways. It was tasteful, and it allowed those families to be a part of a public expression of grief, and to read those names, and to hear the names, and to see the museum begin to emerge. And I felt proud to be a part of that event.
It was something you could contribute, certainly.
Right.
So after CBS, there's a few years there where you're not on you're doing fill-in work, you're doing some pilots.
Right.
What is going through your head up until where we're about to go, which is 2006? Where do you think your career's heading?
I thought it was winding down. I thought I will never have that kind of responsibility, and never have that kind of challenge, never have that adrenaline rush as often as I did for those years. I thought that it's now time to pay more attention to what my daughter's doing, and this.
Your daughter's born what year?
98. And she, best thing that ever happened to me by far. And I can remember saying, "Wow, look at these people say, oh, it gets better every day, it gets better." I said, how could it get any better than this? And it has gotten better, and I just again blessed to have just a remarkable, talented, attractive, smart, funny, and most importantly, nice daughter who even in the teenage years couldn't have been more joyful. And she fell in love with theater, and the two of us still to this day see a lot of theater together, and she is studying it, and I think will be great at it.
Yeah.
She's a fine actress, but she loves the whole picture. She said when she was in 7th grade, I think, she came home, she was in a production, she came home and she said, "Oh, Daddy, my friends, I keep looking up at during rehearsal, I keep looking up at the clock thinking, oh, it's almost over, it's almost over. And I looked over and two of my friends were looking at the clock too. And afterwards I went up to them, I said, I know how you feel, I watched that clock too. And they said, why? And I said, because I don't want it to end. They said, we're watching it because we can't wait to get out of here. We want to go get something to eat or go play. Well, she has that love of the whole process, from the first written word to the strike at the end of the production, and loves just being a part of that storytelling, but only in live theater. She went to LaGuardia High School, the famed high school for the performing arts, where she thrived. But after her first year, she said, Daddy, I don't think I want to be an actor. I think I want to be a director. And I started to puff up a little bit. Then she said, but not like you. I want to be a real director. I want to direct actors on stage, not that TV comedy stuff. And that's where she's headed.
So you're enjoying dadhood.
Yes.
And
yeah.
You think this is it, it's never going to get any higher.
Correct.
You seem probably okay with that.
Yeah, I was okay with it. No, I was comfortable in lots of ways. I'd had my highs and many of them, and felt that it had been a good run. So
then how, in 2006, did this opportunity fall your way?
My AD from America Alive had left, when the show folded, he went right upstairs to this room and became the AD for Saturday Night Live. And he stayed the control room AD for many, many years. He was ready to retire, but they talked him into being the master control AD. So he sort of controlled the show when it's on the air, while the real action starts in here. Called me up summer of 2006 and said, Don, this is the second time I've called about this, but this time you've really got to pay attention. Beth McCarthy Miller, who's directed it for 10, 11 years, is leaving. And she told them last spring she's leaving. They brought people in to watch, and they didn't find anybody. It's summertime. They're in a panic. They need a director. I said, I would love to direct Saturday Night Live, but I have no sketch comedy experience, at least nothing but a few things we did in the Mike Douglas days. He said, well, just send them your reel. I said, I don't have a reel. I don't have a reel of stuff I've done over the years. I've never had to. He said, well, bring some stuff in here and we'll put it together at Saturday Night Live. So I took some shows, including some remotes and some music acts and some Broadway shows I had done capture work on, and we put together a little presentation reel, and I got a call saying come in and meet some of the producers. I met the producers, who were nice and complimentary and interested in what I had done, but clearly were looking for somebody who had done what most of Saturday Night Live is: stage sketch comedy, live performance, a variety of different looks. And so I walked out thinking, it was great to get that far. I'm sure nice of my friend to throw my name out, but they need a sketch director. Took my daughter to Disney World and got a call down there. Lorne Michaels wants to meet you. Okay, but we got 2 more days here. I'll be there on Monday. That was Monday. It was the Tuesday after Labor Day. I showed up in Lorne's office, and he talked for an hour about the things he didn't like and how he was unhappy with the structure in general and people that worked for him, and he didn't talk very much about me or what I could bring to the table, except to say, oh, wait a minute, you directed the Mike Douglas show, huh? Okay. And we talked a little bit about Mike and a little bit about talk shows, and I left thinking once again it was pretty cool to get that far. Next day, it's just they called to say he's going to take a chance on you. And it was a pretty big risk.
What do you think it was? I mean, the old Hollywood sensibility, or
some
from
of that.
Mike Douglas?
Yeah, some of that. And my resume shows that I have directed lots of genres that the show makes fun of. So I could reproduce a game show or reproduce a talk show, or I can certainly direct fake news. I've done real news for a long, long time, and I had done enough music that it was clear that I could step in to direct Saturday Night Live music. What wasn't clear was that I would be able to slide in and direct staged sketches and the kind of comedy that we do. And it was, in fact, a steep learning curve, and it took me a while, and even to this day, still moments where I think, I'm not sure exactly how to capture this particular fart joke in a way that will sell it properly, in a way that the writer intended. And it's a writer's show, and I never was really used to that either. Lorne is a writer, and so to him, the written word is Bible, and it's the image, it's the vision of that sketch writer that comes first. It certainly comes before the look, the directorial style, the set design, or the special effects. It comes before the performances too. Lorne is not thrilled when an actor breaks. You know, if he suddenly starts to laugh, Lorne feels, okay, that might have made it funnier, but it undermined the real purpose of the writer's sketch, and that comes first. And once you take the audience out of that thread and have them laughing at the actor, not laughing at the character, then it destroys what the through line was designed to do. And so my ability to take the written word and say, here's how I can serve it, and here's how I can make that writer's image come to life as clearly as possible. It was a steep learning curve, and I once again took a risk I probably shouldn't have, but I'm so glad I did. It's by far the best job I've ever had. It is, yes, a high mountain to climb, but it is so much fun climbing that mountain.
Now, did Lorne, in addition to obviously the written word is Bible, were there any other directives that he gave you in terms of the look of how he told you he was unhappy with? Did he tell you what he wanted?
Yes. Yes, music, for example. Lorne believes that the purpose of capturing a musical performance in Saturday Night Live is to show that performance as it's designed, which is designed to be seen from people sitting out in front. It's a concert performance, it's a proscenium performance, and it's not designed to be seen from the odd angles or from low angle up at the drummer or from the rear. There's nobody sitting there. They're not staging their choreography to be seen from some handheld camera that's below and behind the stage. And he therefore has never been happy with any musical production that doesn't show it as designed. And so I have become much more conservative with how I approach music performances, and that's because he's right. At least he's not wrong, and I, in many ways, approach the sketch comedy that way too. It's much more presentational, much more flat, and much more simplistic than even a sitcom would be. Just so it's designed for people sitting out there watching it, getting the joke, and an odd cross angle is not going to help sell the joke. If anything, it'll distract from it, and that's taken some time.
Did the work you did with the theatrical capturings for, is it Broadway World that you do, did that inform or help you with that kind of directing? Is it similar?
It's kind of the other way around.
Oh.
Some of it did, in the sense that we're a little more restrictive when we're capturing a staged theatrical event. You can't put cameras, although I've used Steadicams and used a jib up in a balcony and done some camera movement that puts you not only in the best seat in the house, but in seats that don't exist. It's been my experience at Saturday Night Live when I went back to do Broadway stuff, where I made it a little simpler, fewer cuts, fewer sharp angles, more presentational, because that work too is designed to be seen by those people sitting out in the house.
Now, in terms of the learning curve, did you have anyone show, I mean, you're stepping into this show, which I assume you watched.
Sure.
Where a lot of the crew have been here for decades. A lot of them have been here since '75. So how do you come into that environment socially, politically, and then just diving into the attempt? Is it structurally a template that you have to kind of run onto jump onto a running train?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the people here were remarkably supportive, just willing to help in any way they could, and I mean on all levels. This group is the best I've ever worked with, and they are the best at what they do, and they are the fastest at what they do. This whole show comes together in 3 days, and it is astounding what happens. We essentially mount 12 one-act plays from scratch, and that means everything. The set design and the hair and makeup and wardrobe and lighting and the special effects, all the propping, all of that, and it just sort of happens on its own because the people here are that conscientious and that talented and more than willing to help. And I met no resistance at all. Now, some of that had to do with Beth McCarthy Miller, who had set the tone of it being a really fine, respectful place with a great relationship from all of the team and the director. And she sat here for the first 3 shows and helped me out enormously. But when she left, I was treading water a little bit, occasionally gulping more water than I wanted. But again, there were people here to help.
Can you recall the very first show you did? I think it was Dane Cook was the host.
Wow, yeah.
What were the surprises? What were the things that you didn't anticipate that first show?
We did a sketch where Amy Poehler was playing Farrah Fawcett, I think, and doing sort of a fake commercial at home base. And then the next sketch was in a bar over here on stage 3. And so it was all set up with 1 camera on Amy and 4 cameras over here for this sketch. And I believe between dress rehearsal and air, Lorne said, let's do something different. Let's have Amy end her commercial and then get up and just sort of wander off and wander right into the bar and just make it this sort of beta intrusion. We're stepping out of the real world of this commercial and letting her walk into the real world of this bar. And then she'll just sit there and watch it happen, and she'll have a line somewhere at the end. And I thought, I have no idea how to do that. How do we make that transition? And the crane operator said, well, I'll tell you what, I can follow her, and we'll just move the crane with her, and we'll take her all the way over, and we'll see the cameras and everything, and then she'll just settle into the set, and then we'll shoot around her, and the basic blocking that you've laid out will be the same. And that's what we did it that way, and it worked, and you got big laughs, and we cut back to her in the middle of the sketch, and she had some throwaway floozy line, and it was an amazing moment, all because of Lorne's brilliance of coming up with the idea and the crew's willingness to adapt and guide me through it. And that kind of thing happens a lot now.
Yeah. We're going to go through like every day of the week, but just the overall. I know the show is unique. It's different than any other show. What is your role as director? What parts of this operation do you directly oversee?
I'm responsible for staging, the basic blocking of the floor movement of the actors. I also oversee the layout of the floor based on what sets and what sketches go where. I would work directly with the scenic designers in terms of what those sets are and how they're laid out, where the doors are and where the furniture sits, and how many chairs I need, and where there should be a window, and where we need a breakaway wall. Then after I've blocked it, I block it out there on the floor, come in and work with the cameras in terms of the camera choreography, how to capture all of that material. From that point on, it's really sitting and waiting to see how the writers have reacted to that material and how they want to make changes, and they make changes straight up through to sometimes while we're on the air. And those changes have to occasionally affect the blocking and the shooting and the camera choreography. And so it's my job then to sort of sprint in place while those changes are happening, try to keep all the issues in line. What I don't do, and sort of wish I had more to do with, is the dramatic crux of what we do. Because I have 12 Wenat plays to worry about, and the writer has just one, the sketch she's written, and the one that he's envisioned, and the one that he sees in his mind much more clearly than I do. The writer is the one who's responsible more for things like pace and characterization and interrelationships, but all the physical stuff I do.
Mm-hmm. In terms of dealing with the cast, are you working with the cast? Or
I'm working with the cast in terms of action.
Blocking and...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And who are the key crew members that you work with? I know there's a couple people that you rely on, the AD and how do you interrelate and how do you delegate?
I have two brilliant stage managers who have been with the show a lot longer than I have, and one deals mostly with the technical side, the setup, and the how things move where, and the other who's assigned mostly to the cast, especially to the host.
That's Gina and
Jenna deals with the cast, deals with the host, and Chris deals with the crew and the sets and the technician side. Mm-hmm. And they do the work of 5 stage managers in most shows, and they're really good at it. My AD is Michael Mancini, who was my AD for a long time at CBS, and who came in just my second year, and he's just remarkable what he does in the graphic design and the graphic calling graphics and the lower thirds and the videotape rollbacks, and we're now to the point where a sketch we did last week, he called all of the graphics changes in what was a very intense graphic sketch, while I just called the camera shots. And he's also is a backup quarterback and directed.
And you brought him in?
Yes.
Is there anyone else
It's the only person I brought.
Only person you hired.
And I've done 2 good things here. One is to get Michael on board, and the other, I'm responsible for this electric pencil sharpener.
I heard about this. Tell us why there's an electric pencil sharpener.
That's because Beth used a little rubber eraser. And there's so many changes. You spend a lot of time erasing. Well, she would put it down, erase, pick it back up, and write the next thing. Well, I just never could develop that dexterity. I'd put the pencil down, pick up the eraser, and then I'd lose the pencil. And then I'd find the pencil and I'd lose the eraser. And I thought, I got to go back to the old school of just flipping the pencil and using the eraser that's on the other end, and then flip it back and write. That way I won't lose either one of them. I said, the only problem is, she used a mechanical pencil too, so there wasn't an eraser. And she would just turn it to get more lead. Well, the pencils would run out of lead pretty quickly, so I needed a pencil sharpener. So I managed to get management to install an electric pencil sharpener. I'm so proud of that, thank you.
And that will, does it have your name? Does it have a name?
It will after I retire. Memorial pencil sharpener.
Right, because you're going to work here until you're not on the planet anymore, I assume, right?
Yeah, right.
I would love to, if you could take us through a typical work week of what happens each day. So today is Tuesday, last night was Monday. What happens on Monday? Who's here?
Monday, we have a meeting we meet the host for the week. It's about a half-hour meeting. We all sit in Lauren's office. That means the writing staff and some of the other music people and a couple of producers, and I sit there, and each writer pitches an idea to the host. Now, if it's a new host, those ideas usually are just sort of thrown out to scare the host, I think.
Why? Why scare them?
I think just to give him a broad, oh my God, now this person is suggesting I wear a dress, and that person's suggesting that I've got to fly like Peter Pan, and now here's an idea where I've got to go out in the field and do a field piece where I've got to stand on one hand, and how's that going to happen? This is Monday, and the show's on Saturday. The people who have hosted before sort of realize that not all, and sometimes not many, sometimes not any of those ideas will turn into sketches. They're just sort of ideas thrown out there just as feelers. But that's about a half-hour meeting. The host goes over and meets a little more privately with some of the other people, and that's it for Monday.
Do you have much interaction with the host?
At that point, very little. I'll come in and shake hands and say hi and say who I am, and if it's somebody who's worked before, it's to welcome back or welcome home, and I sit and listen to those pitch ideas and secretly giggle.
What happens if you know someone has no acting experience, no comedy experience? Do you get nervous, and do you try and figure out how you're going to cover for them?
Yes. But I'm often wrong, and I'm often fooled, and I do have a host story that...
The ludicrous story?
Yes.
You haven't told it to us yet. Tell us the story.
Now?
Yes, sure.
My first year, 2006, the 5th show I did was hosted by Alec Baldwin, who has done it more than anybody, and it was by far my smoothest show because of him. The staff and crew and writers love it when he's here because he's good at it, and he's smooth in what he does, and he slides from character to character. He knows how it works. He knows where the men's room is, and he helps write. He's just great at it. Well, the following week, as that show ended, I sensed that there was sort of a cloud over the whole operation, as people were talking about the following week. And I realized it was because the host and musical guest, one and the same, was a guy named Chris Bridges, also known as Ludacris, the rapper. You got it, yeah. And the reason is we didn't know much about him. 23-year-old kid. He had no acting experience that any of us knew about. He'd already had a national sort of argument with Oprah about the nature of his lyrics, and we thought he might just come in with a chip on his shoulder and an entourage, and this could be a tough week, especially because he's got a musical guest too. It could be a tough week. Well, the Monday meeting, he was very quiet and smiled at a few of the ideas, and that was it. Tuesday, the host usually has nothing to do at all, maybe record a promo or something. I don't think he did any. Wednesday, we sit around a big table and read as many as 40 sketches, just script in hand, and the rest of the staff sits around as sort of a pseudo-audience, and Lauren listens to the sketches and narrows it down from those 40 to the 12 we'll actually mount. Well, Chris, he did fine. He read okay. Certainly didn't bring much to the table, but it seemed like we'd be all right. Thursday, we rehearsed the music act first, and he knows how to do that. His performances were relatively tame and relatively tasteful. But then we rehearsed the first sketches. We rehearsed the easy sketches first, the ones that don't need much furniture, set design, or set props, because they're not ready.
Right.
So the first thing we rehearsed was a talk show. And it's a talk show where Chris's character came up late in the show, sort of a big round table of cast members, and the cue cards weren't ready, so we were just rehearsing it script in hand. And we get started, and our cast members are already bouncing off the wall with characters that are larger than life, and they're making the crew laugh. And it's a typical rehearsal with the amazing sketch actors we've got. And I look over at Chris, and I see that his hands are shaking. He's holding the script, and he's really, really shaking. I thought, oh my God, I think we're in trouble. This kid might be on something. What the sketch finally worked around to his first line, and that deep baritone voice of his came out with a little quiver in it. And I thought, wait a minute, he's not on something, he's nervous. Well, who wouldn't be nervous? You're 23 years old, you're sitting there with the best sketch actors in the world, they're bouncing off the wall, and you got to come up with some line reading for some character. Well, I suddenly felt so bad for him. Well, for the next 2 days, he worked harder than any host we've ever had. He was the first one on set. The night before, he had written notes and asked questions. And, could I cross here? Could I use a character? Could I use an accent or something here? He tried so hard, and I thought, oh my, we were so wrong about it. The only attitude he showed was, I want to make this right. I want to do this. I'll do the best I can. Well, it's not a very forgiving system to a late starter. So by the time we got to dress rehearsal, he was still struggling a little bit, and he suffered some through. He stuttered through some stuff that was a little rough. And I thought, well, maybe I can help. I'm the director, so I got up out of here when dress rehearsal ended and ran out to the studio, and stopped him as he came out of the studio. And I said, hey, Chris. I gotta tell you something. I've only done 5 of these, but you really have come so far in 2.5 days, man. You have really impressed me. And he looked up and down the hall to see if anybody else was around, and he kind of grabbed me by the lapels and kind of pushed me against the wall. And he said, "Thank you so much for telling me that." He said, "I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Man, this is so hard." But okay, hearing that from the director, that helps. That helps. Well, he went on, and the show was great. He was terrific. And there's one sketch in there that should be in the archives. He did a sketch late in the show with Daryl Hammond. They played 2 old guys sort of reflecting on life, and it was so touching. And he just, this rich character that contrasted so well with Daryl, and I thought, man, that kid fooled us all. Well, the show ended. I get up and I went into his dressing room, and now there was a whole entourage in there. I mean, all of his buddies were standing around and crowded the room. But he saw me, and he sort of pushed his way through his friends. He came over and shook my hand again. He said, "Hey, thanks for talking to me between shows. That really helped." I said, "Hey, you don't have to thank me, man. You really proved me right." And he got quiet again. He said, "Hey, go tell my mom that, will you?"
No.
His mom was standing the other side of the dressing room, and I went up. I said, "Your son did well." And she said, "Well, you tell me when he doesn't do well too." And he was kind of a straight-laced church lady, and it was so cool to see this tough gangster rapper who just wanted to make his mom proud, and that's exactly what it was.
But I imagine it's that unforgiving for anyone coming through. I mean, who holds your hand and tells you what's going on? Does anyone with the talent, I mean, with the guest host? That's
the coolest part about this job. We see the amazing people who are the best at what they do. The best, they're famous movie stars and rappers and politicians and TV stars and athletes, and they are now out of their element. They're out of their comfort zone, and you get to see them in those 3 days deal with something that is really, really challenging. It is harder. It's harder for even for somebody like Alec Baldwin. It's harder for him than for any cast member because he's in almost every sketch. He'll go out and shoot 2 field pieces or 3 field pieces out in Brooklyn all night Friday night. And he's got to rehearse the monologue as well. And they get one break. Sometimes they get that break during Weekend Update. The rest of the time they are intensely involved. That is the hardest job I've ever seen, especially for people who have never done it before. And to see how they handle it is eye-opening and fascinating. Yeah. Fascinating. And mostly it's exhilarating because when I first took the job, I thought, it's a good thing I'm older. I'll be able to deal with the ego issues, because I'm sure it's going to be, oh, do I have to rehearse that again? Come on, I've got to meet a phone call, or I've got to meet my agent, or and even the cast members, I thought the same, that they would be, come on, well, this is, I know what I'm doing. I know this character. I know my blocking. Don't do it again. But there's none of that. None of that. It's just, it's partly that it's such an iconic place to be. It's so fun to be a part of designing this stuff. That's for what it ends up. It's such a rush to make those 2 audiences enjoy, and in some ways more than just enjoy. I feel that last year the show took a turn, and we provided a service that was healing, and it
politically,
was
you mean?
Politically healing, and we held people accountable, and we made people think, and in some ways soothed nerves just by throwing a laugh at something that seemed outrageously painful, and so that makes being here even more precious, and I think hosts and certainly cast members feel the same.
Do you feel like with what happened last year, because I think the audience knows that it was a special year. Was it a collective subconscious thing, or was there something more verbalized in terms of what you were going to do with the show and how you were going to portray what was happening with the election and with everything that unfolded?
Between Dress and Air of the last show, Lorne, who rarely makes any editorial comments about anything other than what he wants fixed and his demand for excellence. He said, I want to tell you that I think this year ranks maybe at the top. He said, perhaps the first year, because it was so new and it was so different and stirred things up in such a way, such an important way, equals. But this year was just as important, just as special, and I'm very, very proud of it. Now, very unusual for Lorne to say, although he said something similar when he accepted the Emmy for the show. But there was a sense that what we were doing meant more, and that it was people were counting on us, and the ratings reflected that, and that puts us additional burden. But all of us had friends who made reference to something they had seen or something they had needed in what we had done, and that meant a lot. Now, of course, the reason the show is what it is, and the reason that year was as important as it was, is because of Lorne Michaels. He is a man who refuses to coast. He insists on excellence every week in every way, in every department, and it's annoying, but it's what's kept this thing alive. Who doesn't like to coast? I mean, you say, oh, okay, it'll come together, or we've done this before, or it's only TV. Not him. It just has to be the best it can be, and he is so demanding in that way, and I have such great respect for him. In addition to the fact that he has this amazing eye and ear for comedy, between dress rehearsal and air, the whole show will reconfigure. He'll throw out 2 or 3 sketches, and then I'll get my script back with 50 post-its in it. And every post-it has script changes in it. There'll be new lines written in here. The whole page is crossed out here. I'll tell them the page, I'll say, this is a different ending. How are we going to do that? And this is at 11 o'clock at night. And I'll have the cameraman sit over here. I'll rush back and I'll try to go through it and make changes in what has been a very meticulously blocked sketch. I'll say, all right, kill shots 23 and 24. And camera 2, make shot 28 a 2 shot, not a single. And wait a minute. There's a different character in here. Oh, wait, all right, camera 1, give me a wide shot. The character's going to come in from the right side. And all of that time, I am cursing him under my breath. And sure enough, at 1 o'clock, I'll finish up here and I'll say, you know something, he was right. That new ending was better. That sketch played funnier after Weekend Update than before. Those new lines really hit. He just has a sense of what works and what doesn't in front of a live audience. And he makes those changes on the fly. And we do our best to keep up with him. And most of the time we do.
Yeah. Do you need to take a break, or do you want to keep going? Okay.
I'm fine. I'm talking about myself. I could do that forever.
Well, speaking of talking about yourself, does he ever come down after a show and say that one really worked or that one didn't? Or does he give you immediate feedback?
No.
No. Is that a part of a strategy, do you think?
I think. It's a theory. My theory is that he, now I'm not putting myself in the same category, but he surrounds himself with the best people at what they do. I mean brilliant people. I mean brilliant writers and brilliant actors and brilliant set designers and stage and makeup people. And as a result, there are naturally some ego issues. You know, the lighting designer will be furious at the set designer because he brought in shiny wallpaper or something, and they'll scream at each other. And there are conflicts like that all the time. But it's all tempered by the fact that it's not our egos that count. And it's not ego at all that counts. It's Lorne's vision. And if our perception, or if the scenic designer's perception is that Lorne wants shiny wallpaper for this sketch, the lighting designer, no matter how much how many Emmys he has, or how furious he is at how difficult it is to light that shiny wallpaper, will say, Lorne gets what he wants, and we'll make it work. Now, I think that sort of happens for everybody, including hosts, including cast members. And we think our job is to fulfill his drive and his vision and his refusal to coast, and therefore we can't. We'll be gone if we do. And that's kind of invigorating.
Yeah.
It's not fun a lot. He's not particularly verbal, communicative, and there's not much back-patting. But it's just strict professional demands that he expects us to live up to, and that's kind of cool.
I want to go through a little bit more detail of the week, and tell me at what points, I know he's not verbal, but at what points he injects his point of view so you know what it is. We talked about Monday. Tuesday's the writer's night. That's what happens tonight.
They'll come in about now, and frequently a whole group of them will work all night, straight through till tomorrow morning. I'll walk in tomorrow morning, and there'll be a stack of 35 to 40 sketches on my desk, and I'll read through them just to get some perspective of what we're looking at and what might pop up. And then starting at 3:30, often not till 4:30, we'll sit at that big table, and the cast are circled around Lorne and the host at the top. And the rest of the crew and staff is pseudo audience around that table. We'll read through all of those sketches, and it takes forever to do that. It takes hours to do that.
Yeah.
And we take a little break in the middle. And for some reason, Lorne, despite the fact that he's sitting there reading all the stage directions and doesn't take notes, or he just throws them sketch after sketch, he really understands what's been offered and what the meat is. And then that ends at 8 o'clock or so. He'll go into his office with a producer or two, or a writer or two, head writers, and they'll narrow it down to maybe the 12 sketches that we'll actually mount. He'll call in me and the production producer, and the two of us will look up at the board to see what's already up and where he may be making a decision about a few others. The host that comes in. And at 9 o'clock at night, we know that we're going to mount these 11, 12 sketches. And I will take those sketches for the first time. I take them to another room where the set designers find out what we're going to actually build Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And the hair and makeup people, and the wardrobe people, and the special effects people know that, okay, here's the sketches.
So they're just waiting. They're waiting.
They wait, yeah. And they start from scratch. I'll go home and just do a rough blocking of the camera positions after we've laid out which sketches go in which places on the floor.
Who decides that, you?
Yeah, along with the supervising producer, Kenny Among, who's been with the show forever and just also brilliant at what he does, and just wide open to just make it, whatever it takes to make it work. And so we lay it out based on lots of things, like a sketch which is going to have water or it has to be in a certain place. Sketches that can't be set up during a commercial have to be in a different place. But a lot of the work we do happens during commercial breaks. Gets set up at home base. We're set up in front of one of the stages with walls and wallpaper and cutlery and tables, and audiences get set up on the fly. Which is another thing, before I forget, the stage crew here is amazing. Sometimes they put on a better show during commercials than we do between commercials. They set and strike stuff in a 2-minute break that is mind-blowing. And they are choreographed like the Rockettes, and they slide things in and out of that floor audience, and a gigantic office that will be at home base for the cold open will be struck while we're doing the opening montage, so that we're ready for the opening monologue.
And the stage itself is not that big.
Not that big. Not that big.
I don't think people realize that. We didn't realize that until we were here. Do you have all these different setups, and there's not enough room to put 12 sets?
Correct.
So it's what space for like 4
1,
or 5?
2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 sets can be up throughout the show. Some of which are up and for dress rehearsal, and we don't need for air because they've been killed, and the rest of them sit and strike during the show, including Weekend Update. It all goes up on home base, all on that big wall and that big desk. All happens at a 1.5-minute break, I think.
Wow. And so how much is your role in orchestrating any of that? Is that the floor managers and Ken is orchestrating the stage crew?
The stagehands themselves are self-disciplined, and they work together with Chris Kelly, the stage manager who's involved with the practical side, the physical side of the work. But it's mostly them. They have a little meeting out here after dress has been, and we know the order for air, and they go through exactly who rolls up the rug and who strikes this flat and who's going to pull up the tables. They are amazing. And I'm in here, so I just occasionally will look up and see them scurrying and think, man, I hope they can make it. They always make it.
Now, there's so much going on in such a short period of time. Are you the voice, or who is the voice that says, no, we can't have the shiny wallpaper, or no, we can't have a pool this week because it's just too much? It
should be my voice. Sometimes it's Kenny's voice. But more often than not, it's, all right, let's figure out a way to make it work. And that's something that is rare too. It's rare in television that there are not many no's here. despite the fact it happens in 3 days, despite the fact that it's live, despite the fact that it's juggled between dress rehearsal and air, we do everything we can not to say no. I'm still not used to that, but it's the way it operates. It's a leap of faith in many ways. Okay, that costume change will get made somehow, even though we move that sketch and she's got to get out of a dinosaur costume and get into a clown costume. It's going to happen, and people make it happen.
How much do you inform what the designers do when you meet with them Wednesday night? What happens in that meeting with you and those 4 guys?
I lay it out pretty specifically in terms of where the walls are and where the doors are and where I want furniture. Then the writers mostly will give them some idea of the tone of, okay, I want this game show to be look like an old 50s game show, and they take it from there. They too are the best I've ever worked with.
Did they ever ask you for advice? Because as you mentioned, you've shot all of these shows for real. If they're referencing something, do they ever ask you for?
Usually they have great reference material. They have an assistant who is during that meeting looking up old pictures and will come in with a whole packet of reference material to a lot of shows that we've done before or the actual shows, and we'll be able to reproduce the Anderson Cooper show or in a simplified way pretty quickly.
So Thursday, you mentioned that's the musical groups, and you start doing.
We rehearse sketches that don't need much scenery, don't need many complex props, but we'll do as many as 4 or 5. Each sketch gets about an hour's work, where I'll do the blocking on the floor and do the camera work in here, and try to run through it twice so that the cast gets a little bit of sense of the rhythm and get a little sense of cue cards. The cue card issue is a whole different.
Talk about why you use cue cards still.
Partly because it's always been done that way. Mostly because it's in a contrary sounding sort of way, it's faster. Even though you could simply type a teleprompter change very quickly and have it gone, rather than completely rewrite with a Sharpie, rewrite a whole new line on a whole new card. It's easier because changes can be made on the fly, and they can be made by somebody else while we're on the air with the cue cards. Mostly though, it's because of the eye line. I mean, most prompters are mounted on cameras. So if you're looking at a prompter to read, it looks like you're actually looking at the home audience. Where most of the time we want it to create the illusion that I'm looking at this person here, and the camera that's on me, I don't want to be looking right at that teleprompter. But if I have my cue cards right over here, I've created the illusion that I'm looking at him, even though I'm looking at the cue cards. And those cue cards can move. Now I'm the host of this talk show. I'm talking to this person, so my cue cards are here. But now I want to turn to the audience, so that cue card operator can run over beside that lens, and now it does create the illusion that I'm looking right at the home audience. And I can also have a set out here in the middle, so I can look away from him like this and pick up a chunk of dialogue out in the front, and then come back here because my cue cards are here. There are flexible roll-around prompters that we could be using, but sometimes we want this actor to suddenly look down at the floor, talk to a dog down here, and then look up and then talk to the audience and look. So it's simpler with cue cards. It's a person running around, and there has to be light on the cue cards, and it creates its own issues on lots of different levels. We rehearse on Thursdays and Fridays with just one set because we just don't have the time or the manpower to turn out the multiple sets that we have on Saturday. Many hosts are better at it than others, but it seems to work. Now, in the same way, we use a crane, which is a gigantic, unwieldy piece of equipment, where a camera operator actually sits in a bucket up with this giant camera. There are 2 men who handle the arm of the crane manually. There's a driver who sits in the back of this thing. It's a gigantic piece of equipment. And nobody in television uses a crane like that, certainly not in a live show anymore. That we use what's called a jib, which is a remote camera, small camera on an extended arm that's handled down by one man at the bottom, and he's got remote controls, and he can move that thing anywhere he wants. It's much more flexible, doesn't take up space, doesn't run into audience, it doesn't block other cameras to get into it. But we use the crane because it looks so cool to that live audience. That live audience says, oh man, look at that big piece of machinery. This is like old time show business. This must be important and significant. And that's Lorne's sense of keeping that audience engaged and invigorated and part of what makes this work. Yeah. Now we happen to have a brilliant crane team that can do more with that equipment than anybody's ever done in the history of cranes, but it still to me is old-fashioned and restrictive and not what I would prefer. But because of what Lorne thinks, I understand how it works.
Right. I mean, so the show, as you describe it, is really for the audience sitting here and their reaction, and the people at home are just lucky to be watching.
I've never had that attitude to any show I've ever done. I've always thought it's the millions of people at home that count. Forget the studio audience. But he knows that as much as that studio audience loves it, that much is the show will be that much better. The performances will be better, and just has a sense of what works and what doesn't work for a particular kind of audience in a particular time in the show and a particular kind of sketch.
Did that get getting used to the reaction? Did you anticipate like time for laugh?
Yeah,
is that something you had to learn here?
Definitely. That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that question, and it did take time. Having been an actor, I thought you wait for your laughs, and so the laugh dies down and you go on to the next line. That's not quite the same here. We kind of force the issue a little bit, and Weekend Update is a great example of that, where I'll make that change to the next graphic, and the anchor will get into the next joke sooner than I normally would have, and that has to do with just the sense of pushing the pace, and letting the people at home, I hear that laughter, I'm laughing with them, but I'm not going to laugh through that entire whole group until they all settle down. I'm ready to move on, and the pace is quicker.
Yeah. Okay, I want to get back to, so Thursday, one thing that when we were here witnessing it and filming in May was the sets aren't built, but you're rehearsing, and there's things flying in as the sets are coming in on Thursday afternoon. So can you talk about a little bit about orchestra? How do you work with that? How do you move on? You said an hour per sketch.
Right.
Do the writers ever say, no, I need more time, or the actors say, they're not getting it? You know, you need more. Are you able to allow that?
To some extent. Thursdays, there's much more flexibility, but the simple sketches and that usually isn't a need to do it because it isn't very complex either in terms of blocking or in terms of handling props. So Thursdays aren't a problem. Friday it starts to be a problem because we have a lot more sketches to do. There's the more complex sketches. We have to squeeze in the monologue and perhaps a cold open that wasn't written until Friday night, and therefore there's more going on, and we may push as late as midnight to get it all in. And
when do you start on Friday? When do you?
We actually go on camera about 1 o'clock. And there are writers who will say, can we possibly do that again? And Kenny and I will do our best to say yes, and we know that is helpful, certainly helpful to performers, but it isn't always possible. And it's a lot of juggling and a lot of balls in the air by Friday evening.
And then when does stuff start changing?
Stuff starts changing from Thursday on, and in fact, the rough sketches I'll work on Wednesday night. I'll come in to rehearse those easy sketches on Thursday, and there'll be some often significant changes just in those sketches. Friday, I'll get brand new sketches, some that have been significantly rewritten.
Brand new?
Yeah, brand new. Yeah.
So no sets, brand new.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that happens. But even the ones that we've already set on will change significantly by Friday. and I'll remark them quickly, and then we'll try to make the sets work for what changes have been made, and then Saturday is super intense. You know, by now the floor is filled with real sets. I mean, I'll walk in on a Saturday, I'll say, "Oh my God, who painted this floor?" And this looks like a real high school in Chicago. And who hung that clock up there? And who wallpapered this wall? And how did all that get done? And it looks real and in so much detail, and stuff that may not even get on camera has been attended to in ways that just are. It's a leap of faith, but it's a faith in people who are just so committed to what they do and good at it. It's an experience every Saturday. I say, I don't know how this happened, but I'm pretty glad it did. We did a sketch one time. We read it on Wednesday, and Bobby Moynihan had written it for himself, where he played a character who comes into a room and gets on a bed. Oh, no. He pulls a Murphy bed down out of the wall. He gets onto that bed, and the Murphy bed flies up with him in it. And then we still have to hear him. He's got to be safely back there somehow. And then it gets pulled down, and there's nothing in there. And I remember thinking, this can't be done. It's Wednesday night. How can we get a workable Murphy bed that somebody can be in, that'll fly up with a person in it and safely get him? Saturday morning, there it was. It was spring-loaded in a way that safely moved him in, and then he disappeared, and another wall came down to hide where he was, and stuff like that seems to happen every week.
Do stunt people come in to coordinate that?
Yeah. We have stunt people on call, and a choreographer on call, and it happens from scratch.
We're going to take a quick break for tech.
Sure.
Battery change.